Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with professional artist and creator of soul portraits, Devorah Brinckerhoff. She is a professional artist with over 30 years whose work has been shown in galleries across the United States and is held in private collections around the world. As a way to process her own trauma, she created soul portraits, a mixed media creative healing practice that uses personal materials like letters, photographs, and journal pages as a way to transform and heal past wounds. Working from her Oregon studio, she creates commissioned soul portraits and also teaches others the process through online and in-person coaching and workshops. It's a story you need to hear. Enjoy. It's so great to meet you. Thank you so much for taking a minute out today.
Yeah, you bet. I'm happy to be here. Thanks.
Me too, you bet. So before we get into your wonderful artwork, I want to know this. 5 years ago, everything changed with the pandemic through so many things under a new microscope. How did you make it through that COVID era, and how has it changed the way that you approach life and art today?
I loved COVID. Everybody slowed down, and so I had always felt before COVID that there was something a little wrong and off with me because I just didn't engage with the pace of the world, and then the world sort of met my pace, which I loved it. In terms of my artwork, it didn't change anything. I was always in the studio and I kept going to the studio. So my husband got pretty sick in 2000, at the end of 2018, beginning of 2019. And so we were just held by COVID and being home and having sort of a safe place to be.
Yeah.
So
So you were already trained. You were in that world,
I was in that world.
so to speak. Yeah. So let me ask you this. Obviously, you're an artist, but if we were to break down what you did on a daily basis, I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of 12-year-olds at career day. One of the kids wants to know what you do for a living. What's your answer?
I would say that I tell stories visually. So that I don't need words, that I talk in images, and that you can say anything visually. And you are the one who knows what your story is, and that's all that matters.
So what did you want to be when you were 12 years old? Was it always artwork?
Yeah,
Okay.
always.
So where are you from originally? Is it Portland?
It's Vermont, actually.
Wow. Okay. All right. You went on a journey to the other side of the country. So take me back to your childhood. What were these foundational elements of creativity, right brain, artwork? What were the things that were imbued and embedded in you that have evolved into who you are today?
Uh, and so I would just say that, again, creativity, drawing, painting, those were my first languages. It was where I was most comfortable. I absolutely loved, I felt like I was raised by the forest and I was always out in the woods, always, always, always. And so there was this natural integration of nature into my work at an early age. So just that kind of amalgamation of everything around me ended up in my drawings, whether it was an experience I had outside or an interaction with animals, like it was always, they were woven together. And I love New England and I love the landscape there. Um, I think I lost the thread of your question. Uh, but it was my first language and
Yeah.
school was not. So I was very dyslexic and I had a really hard time reading and writing. And while I loved holding a pencil and I really enjoyed learning how to write in script because it felt like drawing. But I was a terrible reader. And so speaking in an articulate way was very difficult for me to express my feelings, to communicate with others. I was very limited.
So who were some artists? Who were some visual representations that you loved?
Oh, that's tough because when I was really little, it was now I'm going to forget the some of the realists. Edward Hopper, I think I
Uh-huh.
remember
Yeah.
really liking,
Yeah.
and just being so amazed with that skill and ability. So as I got older, it shifted towards do they call them the Bay Area artists? I'm just like blanking on all the abstract names.
I get it.
I loved, and it's funny because when I went to art school, I really did well, except for art history because I just can't remember names.
So much. I remember that in college. It was crazy.
Yeah,
It was like, how are you doing this? This isn't
yeah,
medical school. This is
no.
art.
Yeah, and we're starting at, the beginning, the very beginning, and running all the way through that in 1 year without any real context. So I pretty much slept through that class. It was a cattle call class anyhow. So that's my D. But yeah, so I just was in awe of what people could create and how they could tell a story in color and how they approach it. So for me, I see things from the outside in. So what is around you creates the form of you. So that's negative space. And so I was dyslexic and also like backwards in terms of how to fill something in. But that's actually a great visual technique. And when you're wanting to create something without any hard lines, that's exactly how you do it. So you look for shadow and what's around it to create actual form. And I just loved it. I love the mind play, the eye play that I could create. It opened up worlds for me.
Absolutely. Didn't Hopper do Nighthawks?
I really have no idea. You're probably right. I'm going to take your word for it. I just remember there was some sort of diner image with
Yeah, with Marilyn Monroe and all of them in there. I think that was
I
Hopper.
I think so.
Yeah,
And I loved it. I loved it.
yeah, I had that up in my 20s. I can't remember where I was at. Yeah, at Nighthawks by Edward Hopper. I had that hanging for a while, and I remember I used to just think it was in the bathroom, and I used to look at it all the time, and I
Yeah,
was just really inspecting and looking at it because Marilyn and James Dean and all of them weren't really like it was realism, but it was enough abstract where it could have
exactly.
been anybody.
Yeah.
But it's just that play on pop culture and kind of tricking your brain into it. We have a really good gallery here in Kansas City called the Kemper Art Museum. And, there's just an eclectic display. And I remember getting weaned on that when I
Yeah.
painted a lot in my 20s because I kind of painted in high school and got away from it. But just going in and playing with those. And the reason why I'm bringing this up is what's a gallery that's always been comfortable for you? Whether you traveled far and wide or close to you, what was that gallery that has always brought you that comfort?
I mean, the really funny thing is that galleries didn't bring me comfort.
Okay.
They were intimidating to me and they're exclusive. And I also felt like they were gatekeepers because I responded to such a wide variety of artists. And if they deemed them credible, then they were available for other people to see. On the other hand, if they didn't, they weren't. And so when I got in, like the whole thing, you go to art school and then the thing is get into a gallery. And I was living in Seattle at the time and really, I'd been all over. So I lived in Prague for a year after traveling throughout Europe and I ran out of money. And I hadn't been painting for a long time, several years. And in order to make enough money, I started painting portraits in the town square and doing murals on people's walls. And I was like, this is so much more intimate, right? I'm in someone's home. I'm painting something on this wall that's been here for hundreds of years. And there was this energy about it that really inspired me. And I felt like I could touch generations that had come before just by being in the presence of this wall. And so energy had always played a role in my life. I always felt like everything was alive, whether it was a tree or a table. Like someone made that table and it came from a tree. And so it all felt connected. And
Yeah.
so that connection became really important to me. And while I have a lot of appreciation for the galleries because it allows you this certain exposure to people, which I really enjoyed, and I wanted more of it. So I walked away from all formal representation because I wanted to be with people. I wanted to be with the people who wanted to walk the city and um, meander into people's studios in a very casual way,
Yep.
where I was just a normal person that happens to work in the way that I work, but there's nothing different about me than about you. And, the painting behind you, I think of Frank Arabach was somebody I was introduced to in college, and he was also somebody who broke a lot of the rules that I had been taught. So the rules that I had been taught was like you can't just squeeze paint out of the tube and use it. Like you have to mix it. You either mix it with medium and you should absolutely mix it with another color. And in the first years of painting, you can only use black and white, which is a great way to learn how to paint and draw with paint, especially with oil. And if you're using a lot, which I did, like I used so much paint that it just became very muddy. And so a palette knife became my best friend because I
Yeah.
could control the paint and the colors. And the colors moved through me. Like I followed them. Like a painting made me. Painting and drawing made me, and I responded. So it's not like I make a painting, it makes me. I'm in a dance with it. I follow that painting, and really I'm following something so much deeper than what's around me or what I'm looking at. It all goes into it, but it's more this connection with the greater cosmos that I just am like, who wouldn't? It's addictive.
Yep.
And that's it's such a slowing down, and it's such a return to our genuine selves. And I did not have that as a kid. I was a really unhappy kid, and I appeared to be really happy. And I felt very lucky. My parents were together. They still are. They love each other very much, and they were working all the time. And so I was terribly lonely, and I made horrible choices. And I had an abuse history that came out when I got pregnant. But that was in my body the entire time, and it dictated the choices that I made. And I had an enormous amount of shame that I was walking around with, and I could spill it out onto the canvas
Yeah.
without knowing what I was doing. And so creativity always acted as a release valve. And I think it probably saved my life over and over and over again.
I,
And yeah,
yeah.
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I think creativity is a version of therapy in itself. Between, I know with painting and writing and all of that, all of those things
Mhm.
definitely will anchor you and make you feel like you belong in humanity because it
Yeah,
can get lonely. And there are all these circumstances that go into the younger portion of your life.
yeah.
Do you remember the first real visceral experience someone had to one of your paintings that made you think, wow, and it just kind of gave you that endorphin rush?
That's a really interesting question. I don't remember specifically. But and my work really isn't it's not for most people. So it was very interesting for me. People would come into my studio or into an opening, and they'd either walk right out or they would stay the entire time and circle and stare and be in front of one for so long. And then they'd ask me a question. And I think when you're in the gallery setting, it's much harder to come up to the artist and talk to them as opposed to being in, like your jeans and a t-shirt in the studio covered in paint. They feel like they can talk to you. And so people who resonated really opened up. And so that was incredible to me. And it was such an honor to have one of my pieces pull out something that wanted to rise to the surface in someone else. So that I, again, like the painting created itself through me, and whatever that was resonated with someone so much that they could then tell me about their most pivotal moments in their life. It provided some kind of safety that I was just so in awe of. And
Yeah.
it's such a privilege and honor to have that experience over and over and over again.
So if you could get into a time machine and go back in time and watch an artist be a fly on the wall and watch how they did their creative process, because you know it's a process. I mean, you got your
Yeah.
studio, you got the meanderings, you got clippings, you got all these things that kind of get your whole thing going. Who would you love to see in their creative prowess?
I go to writers because
Yeah,
the way that I create paintings and drawings, I like I remember for a while I didn't enjoy going to museums because I got so absorbed in other people's process that I really left my own.
yeah.
It was easy for me to take it on. And so I'd pivot and I'd want to go to writers and philosophers and just understand how they were so tapped into something bigger and greater and could stay both within them, like deeply within themselves and tapped into something so much bigger than all of us. I'm really in awe of that and music, right? Because I feel like people who create music hear all the separate layers and I'm just in awe of that. So I love I love meeting people who do things across um uh, genres, I guess is
Yeah.
the word.
I
And
dig it. Yeah.
I can't say a specific name because again, I'm terrible with names.
That's fine. That's fine. So, do you listen to music? What do you do when you create? Is there kind of a requisite kind of ritual of what you do?
Uh, I listen to music all the time,
Yeah.
and there are songs and musicians and composers that I can't get enough of. And I was in a like I Oh, so many. So it's pretty eclectic from jazz to classical to requiems and arias to like Modest Mouse and the National, right? Like it's kind of all over the place, and there are so many in between. But I got really stuck on Modest Mouse for like 5 years, and then segued into the National. And but and the Pixies, but like
Yeah.
when I grew up, it was all like I was in New England, so it was all like Carly Simon and who was she married to for James Taylor,
Yeah.
and everybody loved Led Zeppelin. I was like, well, it's not really my thing. And so, right, like everything I liked, I was not the cool kid when it came to music. You know, Fleetwood Mac and the most depressing songs you could possibly find. So that was me.
So let's say you had a dream tonight. You walked into your childhood house and you
Yeah.
ran into the 13-year-old version of you, and you just gave that version of you a book of all of the paintings that you've made in your life. And she's looking up confused, like, what is this? And you're like, that's me. That's what I've done. Would that version of you believe that this is the way your life has turned out? This is the way that your art has evolved over your lifetime?
I don't know. I think she'd be relieved, and I think I would go back and just be like, "You are so loved, and you
Yeah.
have no idea." And and keep going, right? Please don't
Yeah.
give up because then you won't be able to do all of this and find yourself, right? Like I really found myself, and so I'd tell her like she's got what it takes. And even though she didn't get that message, like I would love to give her that message over and over and over again.
So, as a music lover, what was one of the first really powerful live shows that you just
Oh,
absolutely loved?
so like I hated going to concerts because there are too many people
Oh, yeah.
and I wanted that whole experience to be just me
Yeah.
uh and I also so I didn't go to concerts. I remember like there were musicians that so I can't, I mean, I don't even remember. I think I went to a reggae concert in high school that I really loved because we're all sort of bopping around. And I remember when I got to art school, I had no idea like what OCD sound system was
Yeah.
and like that kind of music and The Cure and the Smiths and I was like so excited. But I never went to concerts because they were too much. They were too many people.
Yeah.
One of
So,
my best friends of all time, he was in a band for a long time. He never went either. Like
yeah.
I mean, I think he went and saw Ben Folds came to town and actually they met him. And it was when Ben Folds 5 was getting really big in like 97, 98, and they were
Wow.
out front pining in Lawrence, Kansas in front of a club. And Ben comes out and I think they knew it was him and they were trying to be cool about it. And they started talking and they were musicians. So they were all talking shop. And Ben's like, I'm going to put you guys your name on the list. And they got in and it was one of the best shows they've ever seen in their lives. Just
That's
totally
awesome.
seminal experience. So I'm curious of all of these things that you've done. I know there's these tangible things that you've done and accomplished as an artist, but overall in your evolution as a human being, what rises to the top? What are you the proudest of?
Well, I'm really the proudest of the work that I do now, and that I get to work with people and their stories in such a direct and powerful way. So, when my life really crashed and burned, I had an intuitive sense to finally open a box of materials that I'd been carrying around for a while, and that was attached to some really hard experiences. And I just started ripping up legal papers and beautiful cards and love letters and hate letters and photographs, and gluing them down onto a canvas, and then writing and painting over it. And I stood back in the middle of this process and I realized that I was disassembling and reassembling myself. I was taking my story apart and in digestible ways, and I was engaging with it from my in a somatic way and not in my head. And so I could circle and circle and circle in my mind, but until I really just like revisited my life and took responsibility for everything in it without reliving it. I was viewing it from the seat of the witness, not the one, like not identifying with those experiences. And it allowed me to gain this perspective that absolutely shifted who I thought I was. And I just kept doing that until I got all the gunk out of my body.
Yeah.
And now I work with other people. So whether they're I do commissions in the sense that it's when I do commissions, it's sometimes they're really about love letters that could often they're about love and love that couldn't be received. Um, and so they sort of filter through me, and the images come through in a kind of in a channeled way, and then they get their piece back, and that they can receive the love because it came through me, which is love. But if I'm working with somebody like a war veteran who has experienced what they feel is just unforgivable, unspeakable, and they are dealing with such darkness and heaviness that they've really lost sight of their own light, I only see light. And I hold the darkness. I've walked through my own trenches, and so I there is not a story or a person that I can hold that I feel judgment towards. So, like human trafficking and perpetrators, like I've worked with both and the victims of, and I don't really know how I would phrase it, but someone who works as the facilitator for, and is so distraught by the harm that they have caused, and that those things are tethered until they are dealt with, right? They don't disappear until they're acknowledged. And I can sit with that, and not only can I feel so honored too. And so if someone has lost their child to suicide and they feel so much just tremendous pain, unspeakable shame and guilt, and questions like what happened, and what was my role in this? It's something that I can hold and again help like move that grief, because it all comes down to grief. Move that grief out of your body. And I do it all through creativity and art. And so that is like the most meaningful, it's the most meaningful work I've ever had the privilege of doing. So I teach it in workshops, and people come in and do just the most magical things. And it's not all dark. Like people come
Yep.
in and celebrate, 50 years of marriage,
Sure.
or the loss of their spouse in a celebratory way, or ceremonies of living. So different groups for different things, but it's really beautiful what people do.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. Family, friends,
Huh.
fans, everyone that knows your work and knows what you do, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Oh dear God. I don't think I can possibly answer that question. Because I think we're always dynamic and always changing. I would have no concept of people's perception of me. And because I had such a negative perception of myself for so long that I would have no idea. I would be delighted if somebody felt just comfortable and at ease in my presence and that we could connect on a heart to heart level. Like that I hopefully people have an experience of me that's just purely genuine and open.
So, being a visual artist, we're in a very strange and interesting place here with AI art.
Mm,
Does that concern you at all?
not at all.
Yeah.
I, yeah, not at all.
I actually have kind of turned the tables on AI art. I have an art generator, so I write too. So I'll
Uh-huh.
come up with little phrases like the rocket en route to Mars layered in the Constitution, and AI will come up with it, and I'll bring it into my iPad and doctor it up and make my own art out of it. And it's
Cool.
interesting because it's this big spaceship on Mars with the Constitution all around it. And it's like those things, it's like nothing is going to replace what we're doing. There's no way that this can be generated. There's no way that what you're doing can be generated. It's just, and even if for some reason it would look generated.
Yeah, and more than anything, again, it's energy. And so when I see an AI generated thing, I don't feel the same energy
Yeah.
behind it.
Hmm.
Um, and if I do, then great, because it's still I haven't yet, is what I'll say.
Yeah.
It's if I do, then it's awakening something that's real inside of me. And so I bring the depth, I bring the realness to it. Or it brought it to me. Like if there's that spark that's happening, then who cares where it comes from? Um, I don't think I think if people feel that they are replaceable, then they're replaceable. And I personally don't think anybody is replaceable. It's a self-perception that I worry about
Yeah.
most for people and for myself. Like if I get into that, it's a mindset.
Yeah.
And so if that's the belief, then that's the reality. And so we are the creators of our own experience. And that's an enormous amount of power. It's enormous. And it's very freeing if we can tap into it. And that's the big if.
Yep. We are the kings and queens of the sentient world for sure.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to delve into your work, any of the good work you're doing, anything going on, where do they go? Where's the best?
I'm on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok, LinkedIn, like all the platforms. Anybody can message me there. I'm often doing workshops. Uh, yeah, so they can reach out and I'll answer to DMs
Okay.
or yeah.
I will put
So
all this, yeah, I will put all of these in the show notes to make
okay.
sure that everybody can adequately reach out. What a joy. Thank you so much. Thank you for opening up your world of art and creativity and your story. I appreciate it so much.
You're so welcome, Joe. Thanks for having me. It's been really
Absolutely.
nice chatting.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. Our esteemed theme music was composed and produced by the great E.E. Pointer of Kansas City's River Cow Orchestra. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.